Roman Roy talks about sex more than almost anyone on television, and seems less capable of having it than almost anyone alive. Every conversation becomes an innuendo. Every business deal becomes an assault. Every expression of love becomes incestuous, humiliating, or obscene. But when Roman is placed in a room with a woman who genuinely likes him, he cannot tolerate ordinary intimacy. He needs something to be wrong. He needs somebody to be absent, forbidden, disgusted, or in control. Roman is not frightened by sex at its most perverse. He is frightened by sex at its most human. Because sex is supposed to make two people real to one another, Roman Roy can only survive it by making one of them disappear. To understand why, we have to examine a dog cage, a father who treated love like combat, a mother who treated motherhood like an inconvenience, and the one woman who could insult Roman just enough to make him feel safe. This is why Roman Roy made me, and many others, afraid of sex. There is a familiar idea that sex reveals the truth about a person. Strip away the clothing, the performance, and the polite language, and supposedly some authentic self remains. Roman Roy presents the exact opposite. Sex does not strip away his performance. Sex is the performance. It is the costume he uses to avoid ever being seen without one. That distinction matters, because Roman's problem is not simply that his desires are unconventional. Consensual humiliation, submission, or age gap relationships are not automatically evidence of trauma, nor do they make a person broken. Roman's pathology lies elsewhere. He cannot separate desire from shame, attention from punishment, or intimacy from domination. Worse, he repeatedly imposes his private compulsions upon people who have not consented to participate in them. Roman sexualizes everything because sexual language allows him to remain vulgar without becoming vulnerable. He can expose his body, describe every imaginable obscenity, and make an entire room uncomfortable. But he cannot plainly say, "I am frightened. I need you. Please do not leave me." He exposes everything except sincerity. And the clearest demonstration of this contradiction is not his relationship with Gerri, it is his failure with Tabitha. Tabitha is intelligent, funny, attractive, and unusually tolerant of Roman's behavior. More importantly, she appears to like him as he is. She does not need his surname, fear of his family, or mistake his cruelty for charisma. She can spar with him without being absorbed by him. Roman initially wants her when she is slightly forbidden. He watches her with Tom, then brings her to Shiv's wedding as though she were a stolen trophy. The attraction begins as transgression. She is desirable because the situation is improper. But once Tabitha becomes available, once she is his girlfriend and offers him something almost ordinary, Roman cannot sleep with her. At the Pierce dinner, Tabitha describes them as eunuch besties. The remark publicly exposes the enormous distance between Roman's sexual persona and his actual sexual life. Suddenly ashamed, he attempts to correct the problem. Yet even then, he can only become interested by asking her to pretend she is dead. The scene is disturbing not merely because of the fantasy itself, but because of what the fantasy removes. A living partner has preferences. A living partner can judge him, reject him, desire him, or ask to be desired in return. A living partner looks back, and looks back alive. Roman wants the sexual act without the encounter. He wants simulation without reciprocity, intimacy without exposure, and another person's body without the terrifying presence of another person's interior life. A healthy adult connection requires two people. Roman has spent his entire life being taught that he is not one. Kendall eventually tells him exactly that. You're not a real person. It is cruel, but it also names the organizing principle of the Roy family. Logan does not raise children as independent human beings. He shapes them into extensions of his own appetite. Their feelings are liabilities, their bodies are battlegrounds, and their declarations of love are weaknesses to be exploited. With Tabitha, Roman would have to stop performing and inhabit his own body. He would have to allow another person to see him without the shield of a joke. That is more frightening to him than any obscenity he can invent. Roman is not afraid of sex. He is afraid that sex may require personhood. Roman survives that fear by becoming the court jester of Waystar Royco, forever wreathing, fidgeting, insulting, and performing for an audience that could turn on him at any moment. His body gives away what his mouth denies. He bites his nails, pulls at his ears, scratches his head, folds himself into furniture, and rarely occupies a room with stillness of somebody who believes he belongs there. Beneath the swagger is a child waiting to discover that he has made another mistake. Whenever Roman feels fear, rejection, grief, or shame, he must convert the feeling into action. He cracks a joke. He attacks someone weaker. He even masturbates. He makes the room more uncomfortable than he feels. Pain becomes performance because anybody can recognize that he has been hurt. That is why Roman's humor is such an effective hiding place. He can tell the complete truth and have everyone assume he is joking. He admits that he masturbated in Gerri's bathroom, and the confession dissolves into the general obscenity of his personality. Because Roman says everything, nobody knows when he is actually saying something real. This makes his repeated jokes about childhood sexual abuse especially unsettling. Roman jokes that Connor molested him during a therapy session. He jokes about being abused by a camp counselor. He jokes about sleeping with his babysitter. With few exceptions, Roman does not make these jokes about some distant scandal or anonymous victim. He places himself inside them. The series never confirms that these are disguised confessions, and I do not think we should force ambiguity into diagnosis. But the pattern remains meaningful. Roman has created a personality in which he could announce the most horrifying truth of his life and guarantee that nobody would investigate it, simply by smiling at the end. His jokes do not demonstrate the absence of pain. They are the mechanism by which pain becomes socially invisible. To understand why shame becomes sexual for Roman, we have to return to the dog pound. At Tom's bachelor party, Roman recalls Kendall locking him inside a cage, forcing him to eat dog food, and treating him like a pooch. He associates the game with wetting the bed and eventually being sent to military school. Kendall and Connor remember something different. They say that Roman enjoyed the game, that the dog food was chocolate cake, and that he asked to leave for military school. Their account makes Roman an unreliable narrator, but it does not make the memory harmless. Connor later explains Logan's theory. When two dogs are fighting, you send the weaker one away. Punish the weak dog, establish the hierarchy, and everybody will understand where they belong. That is the true horror of the story. Whether the bowl contained chocolate cake or dog food is less important than the fact that Logan transformed childhood play into a lesson about power. A father's affection became a competition. Kendall remembers the game as the triumphant victor. Roman remembers it from inside the cage. Roman learned early that the worst possible position was not to be cruel, dishonest, or ridiculous. It was to be the victim. So he built a personality designed to become the criminal before anybody could identify him as the weaker dog. He tears up the $1 million check in front of a child in the first episode. He humiliates his employees. After Logan dismisses him, he lashes out at Greg or the nearest subordinate. When Gerri gains leverage over him, he redirects his panic toward Connor. Roman does not process shame, he transfers it. By putting someone else inside the cage, he briefly convinces himself that he has escaped it, and this logic eventually enters his sexuality. Roman is most comfortable when humiliation is expected, scripted, and controlled. If he is being punished, he knows where he stands. If somebody is disgusted by him, then at least they are paying attention. Shame becomes safer than tenderness because shame has rules. This does not mean that every desire for submission is secretly caused by abuse. It means that Roman, specifically, has learned to interpret degradation as the most reliable proof that another person sees him. There is also a darker interpretation that the show deliberately leaves unresolved. Roman repeatedly turns non-sexual danger into sexual violation. During a physical struggle with Kendall, he does not merely threaten to fight back. He goads Kendall with references to touching his chest and genitals. Under stress, his mind immediately converts violence into sexual violence. His childhood memories contain bedwetting, confinement, confused consent, and the recurring insistence that he may have wanted what humiliated him. None of these details proves that Roman survived childhood sexual abuse. Bedwetting has many causes, memory is unreliable, and Roman makes an art form of saying the most offensive thing available. But the show repeatedly collapses the borders between pleasure and punishment, participation and coercion. The response to the dog pound, that Roman liked it, resembles the language by which painful experiences are often retroactively made consensual. That does not mean Kendall or Connor sexually abused him. It means the Roy family has taught Roman that wanting something and being harmed by it are perfectly compatible with each other. Roman may not know whether he seeks humiliation because he enjoys it, because he believes he deserves it, or because humiliation is the only form of closeness his body recognizes. The uncertainty is the point. He cannot locate the border between the wound and the desire. Then Roman finds Gerri. Their relationship is one of the most fascinating car crashes in modern television because it condenses Roman's entire upbringing into a series of phone calls. Gerri is not enticing to Roman merely because she is older. She possesses the two forms of authority he understands: maternal competence and corporate discipline. She pays attention, offers guidance, and occasionally protects him. But she can also reprimand him, dismiss him, and tell him that he is a revolting little worm. She is the mother who notices him and the father who punishes him. Roman's biological mother, Caroline, treats motherhood like an administrative error. She is cold, evasive, and unwilling to protect him for Logan. Gerri appears to offer the attention Caroline withheld, while retaining enough of Logan's authority to make that attention feel familiar. When Gerri humiliates Roman, he knows the rules. He does not have to wonder whether he is worthy of tenderness because tenderness has been removed from the exchange. He can receive attention in the only form he has learned to trust: degradation. For a time, the dynamic even seems to help him. Gerri advises him professionally. Roman becomes more focused, more competent, and more confident. His taboo desires are acknowledged rather than laughed out of the room. But the relationship is never a harmless private arrangement. Roman repeatedly ignores Gerri's boundaries. He sends explicit photographs she did not request, places her career in danger, and behaves as though his need gives him ownership over her participation. The problem is not his fantasy. The problem is the refusal to recognize Gerri as a person beyond the role she performs for him. That is why the accidental photograph sent to Logan is so destructive. Logan is not simply disgusted that Gerri is older. Logan himself uses younger women to display status and virility. What horrifies him is Roman's desire to submit. In Logan's worldview, powerful men dominate. Roman's sexuality reveals the weak dog beneath the executive costume. And when Logan finally betrays the siblings, Roman turns to Gerri for rescue. He approaches her not merely as a lover or a colleague, but as the maternal protector he has invented. Gerri responds,
"How does it serve my interests?"
In one sentence, the fantasy collapses. Roman asks for care and receives corporate logic. He goes looking for a mother and finds general counsel. Once again, his emotional needs come second to the machine that damaged him. Roman's sexuality is extreme, but it is not separate from the world of succession. He is simply the Roy family's philosophy made embarrassingly visible. Throughout the series, business is described in sexual language. Companies are violated, executives are dominated, political allies bend over for one another. Corporate defeat becomes emasculation, while actual sex becomes another negotiation over leverage. For Logan, love and domination are nearly synonymous. Caroline describes him as a man who would never see something he loved without kicking it, just to discover whether it would return. Roman is the creature who always returns. Logan hits him, ridicules him, manipulates him, and repeatedly withdraws approval. Yet Roman remains the sibling most willing to say that he loves his father. That is the cruel joke at the center of his character. The most sexually vulgar Roy may also be the most emotionally transparent. In this family, wanting love makes him a masochist. Every expression of need hands another person a weapon. Every attempt at closeness risks confirming that he is weak, disgusting, or disposable. So Roman chooses relationships that are impossible before they begin. A healthy girlfriend he cannot touch. An older executive whose career depends on his family. A father whose approval can never become secure. If the relationship is structurally doomed, its failure proves nothing about him. Failing at the impossible is expected. Failing to be loved would be unbearable. He would rather appear unwilling to have a normal relationship than discover he cannot sustain one. He would rather pretend he has no boundaries than admit that people have crossed them. And he would rather become the punchline than allow somebody else to deliver it. Roman Roy can make one fear sex because he reveals that intimacy does not automatically free us from our past. Sometimes it gives the past a body. We often imagine sex as a place where performance ends and two people become honest. Roman demonstrates how sex can become another performance, a reenactment of every hierarchy, humiliation, abandonment, and a fear a person has never learned to name. The cage enters the bedroom. The weak dog enters the bedroom. Caroline's absence and Logan's violence enter the bedroom. Roman is never alone with another adult. He is surrounded by people who taught him what attention costs. That does not absolve him. Roman is both wounded and wounding, victim and victimizer. His history may explain why he harasses Gerri or humiliates weaker people, but it does not excuse him. Succession's brilliance is that it never confuses understanding a person with forgiving everything that a person does. What frightens me, and other people, is not that Roman's desires are strange. It is the desire itself can be trained by shame. A person can be so accustomed to punishment that tenderness feels artificial, so accustomed to abandonment that an available partner feels undesirable, and so accustomed to being mocked that humiliation feels like the only honest form of attention. Yet Roman's desire for love is also the small piece of him that remains human. Healing would not require him to become sexually normal or erase every unconventional desire. It would require him to learn that desire does not have to be a punishment, that attention does not have to hurt, and that another person can be present without becoming a threat or a prop. Roman exposes his body because emotional exposure terrifies him. He speaks obscenely because obscenity is safer than sincerity. He invites punishment because punishment is more predictable than affection. Humiliation has rules. Power has rules. Pain has rules. Intimacy does not. Sex is supposed to make two people real to one another. Roman Roy can only survive it by making one of them disappear. And that is what makes us afraid.